Okay, this is Anne again talking about the week 6 reading assignment. We're going to cover Transcendentalism and Emerson and Thoreau. So what I've done is on the board you can see a few parts of the definition. So let's just go over that first. Transcendentalism is a subcategory of Romanticism. Remember we were talking about Cooper and Irving last week in Romantics. Transcendentalism kind of grew out of that. It's like a kind of a tangent or a side view of it, but still very much romantic. Their beliefs include a rejection of historical or Bible-based religion. They were kind of radicals because Emerson started out being a Unitarian minister and very much into traditional religion before that. So to reject the historical Bible-based religion was sort of radical at the time. And he ended up leaving the church over it. He just could not teach that stuff anymore.
Did he leave the church for, sorry?
Pardon me?
What did he leave it for? The church?
Because he was more radical than that. He was rejecting the Bible-based, old religion, like the religion of the Jews and Christians, Old Testament, New Testament. His thinking was, and not just him, but all the Transcendentalists, was that Moses communicated with God 3,000 years ago, and we not only want, but we have that same personal contact. So why just read about it? Why not live this personal connection with the spiritual? They talked about a return to Jonathan Edwards' divine and supernatural light. Remember how sinners in the hands of an angry God were, it's all dark and damnation, but divine and supernatural light imparted immediately to the soul by the Spirit of God. So Edwards, 100 years before Emerson, was talking about this one-to-one connection with God. And then Emerson takes it a little bit farther, and it's not just God imparting to the soul the Spirit of God. He's saying we are the same thing. Our soul is the same as God's soul. Our soul is the same as the world's soul. We are all one. So in that way, it kind of he incorporates Eastern religion and Buddhism. This is the same idea for Buddhism. That nirvana, the state of soul perfection and everything being equal. So for the Transcendentalists, the soul and the mind were both very important. The soul of each individual is identical with the soul of the world, the soul of the universal being. They endorsed Coleridge and Wordsworth. They started these ideas like in 1798 with preface to lyrical ballads, and this concept of the mind as intuitive, creative, and divine.
What is the Coleridge?
Coleridge and Wordsworth, they
Yeah.
were British romantics. They were major voices in the British romantic movement that very much influenced Emerson and Thoreau. And their idea was that if the power of the imagination, the power of the mind, was had the same creative power as God's creative power, that we could not only be aware of existence through our minds, but that we could create it anytime we wanted to. And that was the equality with God, so to speak. So we want to talk about Emerson and Thoreau. Emerson being the most influential 19th century writer, influenced Thoreau, Whitman, Melville, Hawthorne, Dickinson, and just about everyone else from those times up to the present time. We're going to look at two different essays, Nature and Self-Reliance. I'm going to read parts of Nature to make sure you get this idea of the definition, what he's talking about, and then how self-reliance connects to it. And then we'll end up with Thoreau, who, if Emerson was influencing the 19th century, it was Thoreau who kind of came around and applied Emerson and made him accessible to everyone else since the 19th century. He influenced more modern day politics. People like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, all credit their policies of peaceful protest to Thoreau.
And Thoreau based his on Emerson.
Yes, yeah. Emerson's not all that accessible. When you get in there and start reading him, you'll see why. You get down to a paragraph or two and you'll say, what is he saying? But Thoreau, through Walden and several of his essays, especially he's famous for resistance to civil government, and he illustrates Emerson's ideas of nonconformity and independence and self-reliance. Okay, so I want to go back to nature, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, and then maybe I'll leave the rest of this for you to read on your own. But so let's look at nature and the first paragraph. How's your arm, Luis?
Oh, it's good. No, it's fine.
No, I wonder if I can get this up here. Here we go. I'll move it this way. Okay. This is on page 508 in the Norton text. And I just want to read this first paragraph. You see I've got it all marked up. You should do this with your books too, absolutely. Okay, he says, our age is retrospective. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers. It writes biographies, histories, and criticism. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. We, through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Embosomed for a season in nature, whose floods of life stream around and through us and invite us by the powers they supply to action proportioned to nature, why should we grope among the dry bones of the past, or put the living generation into masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? The sun shines today also. There is more wool and flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works and laws and worship. Okay, and I'm going to just scoot this over to the end of the introduction. No, wait, no, I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go to the end of chapter 1 in nature. This here. All right. And here's where we get a true definition for Transcendentalism. This is the top of page 511. I'm going to start with crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight under a clouded sky without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune. I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. Almost I fear to think how glad I am. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years as the snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, A decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. And now, this is hard to understand, so a friend of his drew this picture of the transparent eyeball, and it does not do justice to that passage we just read. For one thing, he's saying that we are without any material connection, that the only thing important is the being in nature and seeing inside and out, transparency. You can't draw it. But at least this helps. You have the eyeball looking out into
no arms, huh?
You what?
No arms, just walking. He can't.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, it's
It
just
should just be an
eyeball.
You
Mhm.
should try to draw it. Okay, you can turn that off.
Okay.